Deepti Laurent joins me on the set for a look through the papers today. Deepti, you're starting with that catastrophic day of bushfires in Australia.
That's right. The Australian front page is reacting to those devastating bushfires that continue to ravage much of the east coast. A mix of good fortune, planning and quick reactions from frontline firefighters helped Sydney avoid the worst of the fires. But as the Daily Telegraph warns, Australia is not out of the woods yet. Around, dozens of blazes are still out of control. And the state of New South Wales is still in a state of emergency, a firestorm emergency. Further north, the state of Queensland is also facing catastrophe, according to the Courier Mail. You see these really horrific pictures on the front pages today, and the paper breaking down the catastrophe in numbers. 100,000 hectares of land has been lost, 1,000 firefighters on the ground, and temperatures rising. That's just in Queensland alone. Tuesday's fires were the biggest in Australian history. They burnt through 1 million hectares of land, that's what the Australian says, and destroyed dozens of homes, and could go on for months.
It's a devastating situation there. All right, next now to the United States, where the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is meeting with Donald Trump today in Washington, a visit that's getting a lot of attention as well.
That's right, from both the Turkish and U.S. papers. Let's start with the Daily Sabah, a pro-government Turkish daily that says this visit aims to, quote, enhance relations with the U.S., Turkey expecting a new chapter in U.S. ties. But the timing of this meeting is not lost on the papers either. One writer for Harriet Daily does note that this visit comes as those first public hearings into Donald Trump's impeachment inquiry begin. That's not to say the visit will be futile, this writer says, because the leaders will be talking military and defense and the fight against terrorism, even if Erdogan has admitted that relations are quite strained right now. The Washington Post goes further, saying that relations are, there are real cracks in the relationship right now. Furthermore, this writer here saying it's a, quote, tactical mistake to bring Turkey into the eye of the storm in Washington, and a bigger mistake to reduce a decades-long alliance to just a personal relationship with Donald Trump.
You found another interesting article from the New York Times that looks at how the respective son-in-laws are playing a role in these dealings.
Well, that's right, because I never really thought that they could. But on the face of it, Trump and Erdogan don't really have a lot in. They're not natural partners, but their son-in-laws are helping to facilitate things. The Turkish leader, for instance, Turkey's finance minister is Erdogan's son-in-law, and he oversees Turkey's relationship with the U.S. Another son-in-law to a Turkish tycoon is a business partner to the Trump organization. You also have Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's own son-in-law, who's advisor to foreign policy, despite not really having many qualifications in that area. These men, the New York Times explains, are working behind the scenes to shape Donald Trump and Recep Tayyip Erdogan's dealings. You can read more about it in this very interesting article.
And you found another completely different story about a former haute couture model who was given the chance for one more photo shoot.
It's a really sweet story. It's on the front page of the Times of London today. So Leslie McLennan, she's 85 now, Jeannie, but back in the 1950s and 60s, she modeled for Yves Saint Laurent when he was an up-and-coming designer. She even continued to work for him when he moved to Dior, doing photo shoots and catwalks. Now she's living in a UK care home, and by chance, a Vogue photographer came across her while he was visiting somebody else in that same home. He was struck by her beautiful hands, he says, and in fact, it was her hands that got her into modeling in the first place. He arranged a photo shoot, and she got to recreate her modeling days 50, 60 years later.
And again, looks wonderful for 85
amazing.
years old. Dipti, let's wrap up now with a man who lost his frequent flyer miles for a sneaky plot to get his fat cat on board.
That's right. His name is Mikhail Galen. He quite understandably didn't want his beloved cat to travel in the cold underbelly of his flight from Latvia to Vladivostok. The only issue was that his cat was 2 kilos over the limit allowed for hand luggage at check-in, so he rescheduled his flight. He found someone with a lighter cat. He passed off the lighter cat to get through check-in and then swapped it out for Victor, his own cat, when he boarded the flight. It all worked really well until he bragged about it on his Instagram account. You see pictures there of Victor with his glass of of champagne because, of course, he was in business class. Well, now the airlines has stripped him of his 400,000 frequent flyer miles. But, you know, I think if he travels in business class, it's maybe not that big a deal for him.
And the lesson from that is be careful what you post.
Exactly.
Dipti, thank you so much for that. If you want to get another look at the press review, don't forget you can always check it out on our website, the address france24.com.